And then, interesting is I think he's extremely smart. Pick up the subject. He pretty much independent study the topics. Even get help. But I think the area he's. I think he's really well prepared and has studied this field which he's going to present it today. And let's see how you're gonna. Besides, I think your work, enjoy your work working with you, but let's look at your presentation. Okay? Go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Chang. So hello everyone, good morning. Welcome to my defense presentation. So today I talk about modeling of piezo-induced ultrasonic waves for structural health monitoring. Now before I talk about modeling of waves, let me talk about what structural health monitoring or SHM is. So in SHM, we like to know the current state of the structure. So we implement a diagnostic strategy for damage detection and characterization. It's very important to detect a damage in its early stage so we can monitor it and take preventive measures before it can grow and lead to catastrophic failure. A reliable SHM system can improve the safety and reliability of aircrafts and spacecrafts, and can also enable condition-based maintenance as opposed to schedule-based maintenance and lead to a lot of time and cost savings. So there are different types of SHM systems available. One of them, which is widely used, is based on ultrasonic waves induced by piezoelectric sensors. These sensors exhibit phenomenon called piezoelectricity. So when we apply voltage to them, they strain, and when we strain them, they develop electric potential. So they convert electrical energy into mechanical energy and vice versa. So the way the system works is we give voltage input to this sensor, it actuates and sends waves in the structure. These waves reach the sensor and we get voltage output. Now if there is any change in the structure, these waves change and so do the sensor signals. And based on this change, we perform diagnosis. Now there are 4 steps in an SHM system. The first one is detection of damage. So we compare the current signal with the baseline signal and based on the change, detect damage. Then we use localization algorithms to tell where the damage is. Using classification and quantification algorithms, we determine the type of the damage and its extent. And based on that information, we determine or predict the remaining useful life of the structure and also determine when the next maintenance would be required. As you notice, all these 4 steps are based on the change in the sensor signal. So this change is very important. It's already a challenging problem to relate this change to damage and where it is and what's its size. And it becomes even more challenging in real applications where the sensor signal is also affected by varying operating conditions. For example, if there is any change in the temperature, the sensor signals are going to change. Here I have shown sensor signal at 25 degrees C and 75 degrees Celsius. And this change is only because of temperature change. Now if we don't understand how the temperature has changed the signal, the diagnostic algorithms will result in false positives. Now the sensor signal amplitude is sometimes increases with temperature increase at some frequencies and sometimes it decreases at certain frequencies. So it's a very challenging problem. Similarly, different loading conditions can change the sensor signal. As shown in this plot, if the load is 0 kip and if the load is 5 kip, we see change in the sensor signal. Now, these loading conditions can also change the velocity of these ultrasonic waves. The stress dependence of wave velocity is called acousto-elastic effect, and this effect depends on the loading direction, the wave propagation direction, and also the actuation frequency. So it's also a challenging effect. Now, if we want accurate diagnostics, we have to understand fundamentally how the loading conditions and temperature change the sensor signal. And we cannot just rely on experiments to understand that, because it will be very time consuming and costly, because to have experiments for all different combinations of loading conditions and temperature conditions. So what we need to do is model these piezo-induced ultrasonic waves. So let me quickly summarize the previous studies that are done on modeling of these ultrasonic waves. So there exist analytical and semi-analytical methods, but these methods are limited to simple geometries and they don't model piezoelectric sensors and the thin bonding layer between the sensors and the structure. Now in numerical methods, finite element method has been used, and for that multiphysics formulation is used to solve coupled equations, like equations of motion and Gauss's law, to physically model these piezoelectric sensors. But the problem is that in SHM, we use high frequency waves because these waves have small wavelength and we can resolve damage of small size. And if we use linear finite element method, we need a very fine mesh for numerical convergence. So it quickly becomes computationally prohibitive for large structures at high frequencies. To overcome this challenge, spectral element method has been used. Now this method has is higher order method, so it has higher convergence rate. Again, to physically model piezoelectric sensors, multiphysics formulation has been used. But this method uses homogenized smeared properties to model wave propagation in layered material. Now that leads to some inaccuracy when we simulate these waves and the sensor signal. Furthermore, the existing spectral element formulation doesn't take into account the acousto-elastic effect. So we cannot model the effect of load on the wave propagation and the sensor signals. The effect of temperature has been studied in literature, mainly analytically, and the focus has been on the time delay in the sensor signal. The variation in the signal amplitude with temperature has not been studied and has not been modeled accurately using these analytical methods. So the focus of my research is to develop an accurate and efficient numerical model to simulate a sensor response and wave propagation in a structure with piezoelectric sensors. And this model should be able to simulate waves in pre-stressed, homogeneous, as well as layered medium. So in other words, what I would like to do is for a given actuation signal and a structure under given loading conditions and temperature, I would like to accurately simulate the induced wave and the sensor response. So let me describe the method of approach. So first we need the governing equations. So for that, existing formulation of acousto-elasticity was extended to include the coupled equations so we can physically model the piezoelectric sensors. Now these equations we cannot solve analytically for complex structures. So to solve these equations numerically, spectral element formulation was developed. To model wave propagation in layered medium accurately and efficiently, formulation of layered solid spectral element was also developed. Then some experiments and simulations were carried out to validate this model for metallic and composite plates, and also to see if we can model the effect of load and temperature on the wave propagation and the sensor response. So let's begin with the governing equations. So here we have the structure in the natural state, which is unstressed. Then we have the initial state where the structure is under static loads. The displacements, stresses and strains because of these static loads are U0, sigma 0 and epsilon 0 respectively. Then we have the final state where the waves propagate in this pre-stressed medium. So the displacements in the final state, UF, can be written as U0 plus U, where U is the incremental displacement because of the wave motion. And similarly, we can write sigma F as the sum of sigma 0 and sigma, and epsilon F as epsilon 0 plus epsilon. Now in materials, there is very, very small nonlinearity in the stress-strain relationship. Usually we only consider the first term, the linear term, and that gives us the Hooke's law. And these nonlinear terms, higher order terms, have usually very small effect. To show you how small this nonlinearity is, here is the stress-strain curve for aluminum. The blue line is considering only the linear term, and the red curve is considering the next higher order term. The difference is very small. And the slope of this red line gives us the effective elastic modulus at that point, which depends on the strain at that point. Now it turns out that these waves are very sensitive to these nonlinearities. The velocity of these waves are sensitive to the third order elastic moduli in this higher order term. The wave motion is actually small disturbances propagating, and the motion of these particles is affected by the effective elastic modulus. Now this wave motion is very small amplitude, so the incremental displacement because of the wave motion is very small compared to the displacement because of the static loads. And also the incremental strain is also small because of the strain because of the static load. So when we compute these effective elastic moduli, we only take into account the strain due to the static load in the initial state. So since we want to retain some higher order terms, we start with nonlinear equations given in the literature by Gandhi and Michaels. So here the first equation is the equilibrium equation for the initial state. And the second equation is the equilibrium equation for the final state, where the waves propagate in this pre-stressed medium. Now what we do is we subtract these equations and use the assumption that the incremental displacements are small compared to the initial displacements, and linearize these equations about the statically loaded condition. So after linearization, we get this equation of motion. Now here we have already solved the static equation, so we already know the initial displacements and initial stresses. And the unknowns are in this equation are the incremental stresses and strains and displacement because of the wave motion. And you can notice this equation is linear in terms of sigma and u. Now since we want to physically model the piezoelectric sensors, we also have to consider the Gauss's law for electricity, which states that the divergence of the electric displacement is 0 because we don't have free charge. So here we have a plate with adhesively bonded piezoelectric sensors. The domain of the adhesives and the plate is represented by omega s, and the domain of the piezoelectric materials is represented by omega p. So we solve the first equation, which is equations of motion in both domains, and they solve the second equation, which is Gauss's law, for the piezoelectric material in omega p. The electromechanical coupling for piezoelectric materials occurs through the constitutive relations, where the stress depends on the strain and the electric field E. Now here C are the second order elastic moduli, C3 are the third order elastic moduli. Epsilon is the approximate Lagrangian strain, and this lunate epsilon is the Cauchy strain. This E is the electric field, and small e are the piezoelectric coefficients in stress charge form. Now the electric displacement also depends on the strain and the electric field. Here kappa are the dielectric constants in the stress charge form. The electric field is given by the gradient of the electric potential phi. So in the next step, what we do is we take these equations, constitutive equations, and substitute them in the governing equations to get this set of equations. So this equation is the equations of motion, and the second equation is the Gauss's law. The first term depends on the initial stresses because of the static load. The second term, we have the effective elastic moduli gamma that depend on the second order moduli and third order moduli, and the initial strains. E star are the effective piezoelectric coefficients that depend on E and the initial strain. Now in case of stress-free initial state, these equations should reduce to the coupled equations that are already available in literature given by Kim et al. So we can simplify these equations in case of stress-free initial state by ignoring the first term and ignoring the terms that depend on the initial strains. So instead of gamma, we get back the second order elastic moduli, and instead of E star, we get back E. And these equations are exactly the same as given in literature. So far, I showed you how we can derive the coupled equations taking into account the acousto-elastic effect. Now we want to solve these equations, but we cannot solve them analytically for large complex structures. So we want to use a numerical method. So in this case, we use spectral element method to solve these equations numerically. To solve them numerically, we divide the domain into small elements, just like in finite element method. But as I mentioned earlier, linear finite element method is not well suited for this problem. So what we do is we use higher order solid spectral elements. A typical solid spectral element is shown here. And the higher convergence rate of this method was demonstrated by Kim et al. And is shown in this figure. Here on the x-axis, we have nodes per wavelength. On the y-axis, we have arrival time of the wave. The green line is the extrapolated solution. The black curve is for ACM, and the blue and red curves are using FEM with reduced and full integration. Now as you can see, with ACM, we only need 8 to 10 nodes per wavelength for numerical convergence. Whereas with FEM, we need a lot of nodes. So with ACM, we have higher convergence rate, which means more accuracy, and we can use coarser mesh, which means we have more speed. So so because of that reason, ACM uses far less computational resources when compared to the finite element method, as shown in this table. So in this research, we use spectral element method to solve these equations numerically. The formulation of the ACM is very similar to that of the FEM. The differences are the nodes are located at the GLL points, Gauss-Lobete-Legendre points, and we use nodal quadrature for numerical integration. The unknowns are 3 displacements and electric potential at each of these nodes. And based on the shape functions of this element, we can approximate the displacement field and the strain inside the element in terms of the nodal displacement vector, E. And we can also write approximate electric potential in the element in terms of the nodal electric potential vector, and also the electric field in terms of nodal potential vector, electric potential vector. So what we do is we take the governing equations, develop the weak formulation, and substitute these approximate displacements and electric potential to get the equations in matrix form that we can solve. So the aim of weak formulation is to find an approximate solution to the differential equations in integral residual sense. So we take the weak formulation, integrate it by part over the element domain, and substitute these approximate solutions, and get the equations in matrix form for element E. So let me explain each term here. The first term gives us the mass matrix times the acceleration vector. The second term gives us the geometric stiffness matrix that depends on the initial stresses. The third term gives us the mechanical stiffness matrix, which depends on the effective elastic moduli. On the right hand side of the equations of motion, we have the coupling matrix. Now in Gauss's law, the first term gives us the electrical stiffness matrix, where this term, which depends on the dielectric constants. And then we have the coupling matrix for the Gauss's law. So what we do is we take all these element matrices from all elements and assemble them to get global system of equations as shown here. We also introduce a damping term, this damping matrix times velocity vector. In this case, we use Rayleigh damping model. So the damping matrix is proportional to the mass matrix and the stiffness matrix. Now these equations are semi-discretized. They are discretized in the spatial domain. So we solve them in time using central difference method. In case of stress-free initial state, we can simplify these equations. We can neglect the term, ignore the term that depends on the initial stresses, and we use original material properties while evaluating these element stiffness and coupling matrices. So far I showed you how we can derive these equations and solve them using spectral element method. So let me show you the formulation of the layered solid spectral element to accurately and efficiently model waves in layered mediums such as laminated composites. So before I show you this formulation, let me quickly describe how we evaluate this integral for all elements. So for example, let's consider the mechanical stiffness matrix for element E. Here B is the strain displacement matrix, C are the elastic moduli, and omega E is the physical domain of the element. It's inefficient to evaluate this integral in the physical domain, so what we do is we transform it into parent domain, which goes from -1 to 1 in all 3 directions. And here J is the Jacobian matrix of this transformation. We evaluate this integral using some quadrature. So what we do is we evaluate the integrand at some points inside this domain. These points are called integration points. So we evaluate this integrand at these integration points and multiply by corresponding weights. And the sum gives us the approximate value of the integration. Now in case of spectral element method, we use nodal quadrature, which means that the integration points are the same as the nodes. However, for any numerical quadrature to work, the integrand has to be continuous in the domain. Right? But in case of layered material, the stiffness matrix, the mechanical, these material stiffness or elastic moduli, they are constant in one layer, but they vary across the layers depending on the fiber orientation in case of laminated composites. So if we want to model several layers in one element, this integrand becomes discontinuous in the domain. And we cannot use nodal quadrature as it is to give us accurate results. So one way is to use one element per layer, so the integrand is continuous in one layer, each layer. Now this is accurate, but it's not efficient because we have so many nodes in the thickness direction, and this increases the size of the problem enormously. So what's usually done is all these layers are homogenized and the smeared material properties are used. So now the average C is constant in the element, and we can use this numerical quadrature, in nodal quadrature for integration. Now this is efficient, but for wave propagation simulations, it doesn't give us accurate results, as I'll demonstrate later. So to overcome this challenge, formulation of layered solid spectral element was developed. It uses hybrid integration rule. So basically we used nodal quadrature in the in-plane direction because there is no discontinuity in the in-plane direction. And we use Simpson's one-third rule in the stacking direction. So for example, let's consider the same element again with 4 layers. And these are the integration points of this hybrid integration rule. As you can see, there are 3 integration points in each layer. So what Simpson's one-third rule does is it evaluates the integrand in each layer at those 3 points and fits the quadratic. So basically now we have a piecewise quadratic in the thickness direction and we integrate it using the hybrid integration rule. So using this layered solid spectral element, we can model multiple layers per element and accurately and efficiently model wave propagation in layered material.
It's no longer a truly spectral element in that case, though, right?
The formulation is still the spectral element, but we use
But you don't have pure nodal quadrature, though.
No.
Okay.
So basically we only use it for the stiffness matrix because the stiffness matrix changes with each layer.
Yeah.
But for mass matrix we still use the nodal quadrature because the density is there. So based on this formulation, a numerical model called piezo-enabled spectral element analysis code was developed. So for a given structure, we physically model the piezoelectric elements and the adhesive layer and create the mesh in commercially available software called Abaqus. Then we use PECIA to solve the coupled equations. So basically for a given voltage input, it solves the wave propagation and gives us the voltage output at the sensors. So when we develop any numerical model, we have to validate it for its accuracy. So let me show you some validation results for metallic plate and composite plates and also the effect of load and temperature. So before I show you the validation results for metallic plate, let me show you how I quantified the error in the simulated signals with respect to the experimental signals. So we take the signals in time domain and get their envelopes using the Hilbert transform. And we define the error in the simulated signal with respect to the experimental signal using this relation, which basically calculates the percentage error based on the difference in the energy content of the envelopes for given time window. And here are the material properties that were used in the simulation. So this table lists the mechanical properties for aluminum, composite, adhesive, and piezoelectric element. So in experiments, we used Hyzol 9696 adhesive to bond these sensors to the structure. And the piezoelectric element was lead zirconate titanate 5A, which is PZT5A. So this table tells us the elastic constants, Poisson's ratios, and density for all these materials. Now, electromechanical properties of the piezoelectric material are often expressed in terms of strain charge form. So here D are the piezoelectric coefficients and kappa subscript sigma are the dielectric constants in this strain charge form. But in formulations, we used these constants and these properties in stress charge form. So we have to use these transformations to get these properties E and kappa. So the properties, the piezoelectric properties in strain charge form are also available in literature and shown here. Now the third order elastic moduli for isotropic material can be expressed as a function of 3 constants called Murnaghan constant, LMN. So these constants for aluminum are shown here. So we validated PECIA for a stiffened metallic plate as shown here. 1/4 inch diameter and 250 micron thick PZTs were bonded to the structure using Hyzol 9696 adhesive. And a 5-cycle tone bus signal with central frequency of 200 kilohertz was given to the actuator A. The signal input signal is shown here. Now, we recorded the sensor response at this sensor. This plot shows us the comparison between the experimental signal and the simulated signals. And we can see they match very well. The error in the first wave packet is about 4%, and the error in the second wave packet is about 3%. So once we know that we can accurately model wave propagation and sensor response for metallic plates, let's see if we can use PECIA to model the effect of load on wave propagation and sensor signal. So to validate the acoustoelastic formulation, experiments and simulations were carried out for an aluminum plate as shown here. 8 piezoelectric sensors were mounted on the surface. 1 through 4 were used as actuators and 5 through 8 were used as sensors. the plate was loaded along the length in tension in the MTS machine. And the load was increased from 0 to 5 kips instead of 1 kip. And at each step, we recorded this, we actuated the sensors 1 through 4, one by one, and recorded the data using sensors 5 through 8. So in simulations, in PESIA simulations, to model the acousto-elastic effect, we also need the initial displacement and initial strains and stresses. So first we have to solve the static problem. So we solved the static problem in Abaqus using finite element method and got the displacements. So we then interpolated these initial displacements for the spectral element mesh and then calculated the initial stresses and effective material properties for these elements and then solved the coupled equations to model the wave propagation in this pre-stressed medium. We compared the simulated results and experimental results using the relative group velocity and the relative amplitude of the first wave packet from the experimental signals and the simulated signals. The relative group velocity and relative amplitudes were defined with respect to those when there was zero load applied. This slide shows you the importance of including the nonlinearity in the stress-strain relationship. So here I have compared the relative group velocity versus load for path 1-6. So we actuate 1 and sense using 6. And the actuation frequency was 200 kilohertz. So here I have compared the experimental results with simulated results. But in this case, I didn't include the third order elastic moduli for the nonlinearity in the stress-strain relationship. As you can see, we cannot model the acousto-elastic effect if we ignore this nonlinearity. Here I have shown the comparison between the experimental and simulated results. And in this case, we did include the third order elastic moduli. And you can see this wave velocity is very sensitive to these third order elastic moduli. So and using this PESIA, we can accurately model the variation in the group velocity in this because of the load. This slide compares again the group velocity versus load for path 1-6, but for two different frequencies. On the left side, we have the simulation and experimental results for 200 kilohertz. And on the right hand side, we have the simulated and experimental results for 250 kilohertz. I used R squared value as a measure of correlation between these two curves. And you can see these R squared values are very close to 1, which means there is very good correlation between the experimental signals and the simulated signals. This slide compares the experimental results with the simulated results for path 4-5, where we actuated sensor 4 and sensed using 5 at two different frequencies, 200 on the left and 250 kilohertz on the right. Again, we see there is very good correlation between the experimental signals and the sensor signals. Now, using this acousto-elastic formulation, it shows that we can accurately model the variation in the group velocity of the waves. But we also observed that there was huge variation in the sensor signal amplitude as we changed the load. So here I have shown the relative amplitude for path 1-6 for actuation signal 200 kilohertz. And we can see when the load was 5 kips, there was 58% increase in the sensor signal amplitude. Now the reason for that are the electromechanical properties. This D and kappa, the electromechanical properties, are measured at zero stress, but they are very sensitive to stress, as shown by Yang et al. They can change significantly by as much as 20–30% when compressive load is applied. And the signal amplitude is very sensitive to these piezoelectric coefficients and the dielectric constants. Parametric study tells us that 1% increase in D31 gives rise to 2.3% increase in the amplitude, and 1% increase in kappa 33 reduces the amplitude by 1.2%. Unfortunately, the required variation for in D31 and kappa 33 under this tensile load is not available in literature. So we didn't assume any variation in simulations. And as you can see, we cannot capture the variation in load with variation in the signal amplitude with load in the simulations. We can assume some variation in D31 and capture the variation in the sensor signal amplitude. But here I want to emphasize that the formulation, the governing equations and the spectral element formulation is complete. But we need experimental studies to get the required variation in D31 and kappa 33 under tensile stress. So using spectral element method, I showed you that we can model the effect of load on wave propagation and the group velocity. So let's see if we can model the effect of temperature using PESIA. Now when there is change in ambient temperature, it's going to change the material properties, it's going to induce thermal expansion, thermal stresses, and that can change the sensor signal. To study the effect of temperature on a sensor signal amplitude, we carried out some experiments on an aluminum plate as shown here. We mounted piezoelectric sensors on the surface using Hyzal 9696 adhesive and put the plate in an oven and recorded the sensor signals at different temperatures. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the variation in the sensor signal amplitude is not well modeled in literature using analytical methods. So the main focus of this study was to model the variation in the sensor signal amplitude at different temperatures. Now in this case, since the structure is free, the thermal stresses are negligible and effect of thermal expansion is also negligible on the sensor output and the wave propagation as given in the literature. So the effect of change in temperature was modeled by changing the material properties with temperature. The variation in the properties of aluminum and PZT is readily available in literature, but that for the adhesive could not be found. So we carried out some experiments to get the Young's modulus of the adhesive at different temperatures. And this relation is quadratic and is given by this equation. Now, since we wanted to compare the change in amplitude, here I have compared the normalized maximum amplitude from experiments and simulations at different actuation frequencies and different temperatures. On the left-hand side, we have the experimental results. On the right-hand side, we have the simulation results. The black curve is for 25 degrees Celsius, the red one is for 50 degrees Celsius, and the blue one is for 75 degrees Celsius. As we can see, the simulated results are in very good agreement with the experimental results. As we increase the temperature, the resonant frequency shifts to the left, and we see that the amplitude of the sensor signal decreases at low frequencies, and in this frequency range, it increases with temperature, and in the frequency range that's higher than the resonant frequency, it decreases as we increase the temperature. And we can capture this effect very accurately in the simulations. Now, once we know that we can model the trend in the sensor signal amplitude with temperature accurately using the simulations, parametric study was carried out to find out the most important material properties that influence the sensor signal amplitude. So what we did was carried out simulations for 25 degrees Celsius and 75 degrees Celsius, but only varied one property at a time. So here are the results of the parametric study. And as you can see, the most important property is the shear modulus of adhesive, this red bar. That influences the sensor signal amplitude significantly. The other properties are the electromechanical properties of the piezoelectric material, kappa 33, D31, and the Young's modulus of PZT and aluminum. Now, if we look at the experimental results, which contain the variation in all material properties, you can see that the amplitude decreases at 150. At 350 kilohertz, the amplitude increases with temperature, and here again it decreases with temperature. And if you look at the bar plot here, you can see that this behavior is actually governed by how the shear modulus of adhesive changes the sensor signal amplitude. As you can see here, if there is change in the adhesive shear modulus, it reduces the sensor signal amplitude at 150. It increases the amplitude at 350 kilohertz and reduces the amplitude again at 500 kilohertz. And we observe the same behavior in the experiments. So why do we need these parametric studies? So using this parametric study, we can develop some compensation model to improve the accuracy of diagnostics. So we can relate the change in the sensor signal because of change in temperature to the change in material properties with temperature. So for a given sensor signal, which has the effect of both damage and temperature, we can remove the effect of temperature and get the effect of damage alone. And using that in diagnostics, we can improve the accuracy and avoid false positives. So let me show you the validation for the layered solid spectral element. To validate the layered solid spectral element, simulations and experiments were carried out for a composite plate with layup 0 to 94 symmetric. Again, piezoelectric sensors with quarter-inch diameter and 250 micron thickness were mounted on the surface using Hyzol 9696 adhesive. The voltage input was given to actuator A, and signals were recorded at sensor S1 and S2. This slide shows the comparison for sensor S1. On the left-hand side, we have experimental and simulation results using the homogenized smeared material properties. And on the right-hand side, we have the experimental and simulation results using the layered solid spectral element. As you can see, there is 20% error in the first wave packet if you use the smeared properties, and the 26% error in the second wave packet. But if you use the layered solid spectral element, the error reduces to less than 1% for the first wave packet, and almost 3%, 3 to 4% for the second wave packet. This slide shows the validation results for sensor S2. On the left-hand side, again, we have comparison between the experimental signals and simulated signals using smeared material properties. And on the right-hand side, we have the simulated signals using layered solid spectral element. If you use smeared properties, the error is 10% and almost 200% for the second wave packet. But with layered solid spectral element, the error is only 6% and 17% for the first and second wave packets. So this shows that we can use PECIA with the layered solid spectral element formulation to accurately model wave propagation and sensor signals in layered medium. So let me summarize the contributions of this research. So I developed a multiphysics formulation with including the acoustoelastic effect. Then to solve these equations numerically, I developed spectral element formulation, and then also proposed this formulation of layered solid spectral element to accurately and efficiently model wave propagation in layered medium. Then I used this PECIA to show that we can accurately model the effect of load and effect of varying temperature on the sensor signal and wave propagation. So the main takeaway message is that we have the computational tool, we have the numerical tool that we can use to design an SHM system. So we can use PECIA to model different combinations of operating conditions and use that physical insight to make robust diagnostic algorithms. We can also use it to optimize the sensor network for a given structure. Now in future work, we can also use PECIA to improve the accuracy of damage classification and quantification. So for that, we need to model different damage types. So we can study how different damage types affect the sensor signal differently. And if you want to use this PECIA to design sensor network for large complex structures, we also have to reduce its runtime to make it practical and So for that, parallel implementation of PECIA is required. So before I conclude my presentation, I would like to acknowledge the financial support of NASA, AFOSR, MURI, and ALCOA that made this research possible. I would like to thank Professor Fuko Chang for his invaluable guidance and support during the course of my PhD. I consider myself very fortunate that I got a chance to work with you. So thank you very much. I would also like to thank Professor Christensen for all the important discussions and also agreeing to be on the reading committee. And Professor Law, thank you very much for being on the reading committee. I would like to thank Professor Zeneski for agreeing to be on the oral examination committee, and Professor Pinsky for chairing the committee. I took 3 classes with you, finite element series, and I learned a lot, and it was very helpful for this research. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank Robin, Liza, Patrick, Barbara, Jay, Grace, all Aeroastro staff for all the help in past 5-6 years. I would like to thank all the current and past lab members of Structures and Composites Lab, especially Trichang, Cecilia, Surajit, Nathan. And I mean, it was a privilege to be in the same research group as you guys. So thank you very much for everything. I would like to thank all my friends I'm highly indebted to my friends for making my stay here at Stanford memorable. I'm very grateful to my lovely wife Amrita. So I cannot put my feelings into words, and I'm terrible with words anyway, so thank you very much. I would also like to thank my sister Danu, my in-laws, and my parents for always encouraging me and supporting me in all my decisions. And I also thank everyone for being here. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, Kuldeep, thank you very much for a very eloquent presentation. Beautifully clear, I thought. Okay, so the floor is open to questions.
Is there a way to test that how well your simulations do under both loading and temperature conditions?
Yes, we can do that. But so we have the facility right now in our lab that we can model both. I mean, have studies for both temperature and load. So we have environmental changes for that case, and we can do the simulations in both conditions. So we can do that.
Questions? I've got lots, but I'm going to save them. Okay, so, yeah, okay.
I mean, I'm a layperson, so what is the application of this, like, in the real world?
As I mentioned earlier, that the sensor signal that we get from sensors is influenced by all different parameters, like operating conditions. And the main objective is that we want to detect damage in the structure. So we want to separate the effect of all these operating conditions and damage. So we can use these simulations to study how other operating conditions affect the signal and use that physical insight in developing robust diagnostic algorithms. And we can also use these simulations if we want to design a sensor network for a given structure and so on.
So the structure can be like
Any radar structure.
or
Okay, so if there are no more questions, let's thank Kuldeep one more time for a nice presentation. And the committee now will continue, I guess, in private. So thank you all very much for your attendance.